In tonight's Government Insider, the highway spending bill. Over the summer, Congress passed a kick-the-can measure to fund the nation's roadways, but it expires at the end of this month. Has any progress been made on a long-term deal? Joining me tonight for some answers is Stephanie Beasley, transportation reporter at Bloomberg BNA. Stephanie, the current highway funding plan expires October 29th, and the House is expected to advance a long-term budget bill next week. What's the latest?
So as you said, the House Transportation Committee announced actually yesterday that they're planning to mark up a long-term surface transportation bill next Thursday, October 22nd. The word on the street, so to speak, this morning was that the bill was going to be unveiled today, but I have heard from the committee since then that it will be tomorrow when the House introduces their bill formally.
The Senate passed a 6-year funding bill in July. Why has it taken the House so long to come up with their plan?
Well, part of the big issue with highway funding is that highway and transit programs are funded by the Highway Trust Fund, and that money is coming from fuel taxes. So for several years, the fuel taxes have been sort of an unreliable revenue source, and Congress has been trying to figure out how to pay for these programs by other means. So the Senate bill that passed had a series of pay-fors. It was 3 years of funding, even though it's a 6-year bill. And they had pay-fors that included a transfer of general funds to the Highway Trust Fund, and that was offset by some other things like the sale of crude oil. But the House was hoping to come up with like 6 years solidly of funding. And so they had an alternative plan to use one-time revenue from taxing offshore corporate earnings. And so Paul Ryan, who is the chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee, and several members of that committee, along with the third-ranking Senate Democrat Charles Schumer, have been talking about tying highway funding to this one-time, tax overhaul. Those talks have stalled at this point, and so there's a question about how this House bill that's expected to come out soon will be funded.
You've talked about some of the differences. Any others we should know about, differences between the measures in the House and Senate?
So the big difference, what we're looking to see right now is how, like I said, how the House is going to fund this bill. Are they going to pick up the pay-fors that the Senate has put forward, or are they going to come up with something else? There could also be some policy differences. The chairman of the House Transportation Committee has alluded to the fact that he and the Senate haven't always agreed on things like environmental permitting and in some other policy areas. So there could be some major differences, and that's definitely what I'll be looking for when this bill comes out.
Now, Stephanie, what happens if no agreement is reached by October 29th? Could another short-term bill be passed?
Right. So we have a pretty small window here. The House is set to mark up legislation, but they still have to reconcile whatever they put forth with what the Senate has put out. And so you have about a week to try to do that. So the most likely scenario is that they're going to have to pass another extension. Now, whether they do that along with passing a long-term bill is kind of the question here, but yeah, it does seem like they're going to have to pass another extension.
All right, Stephanie, let's switch gears to another major deadline looming in the transportation world. At the end of the year, rail operators must install new safety technology called Positive Train Control. What is PTC?
So Positive Train Control is an anti-derailment, anti-collision safety system that relies on wireless communication. So you may recall the Amtrak derailment in May in Philadelphia. So federal regulators have said that that could have been averted if the train had had this Positive Train Control technology installed.
Now, how has the railroad industry responded to the deadline?
So a number of rail groups, including the Association for American Railroads, which represents both freight and passenger rail industry members, have said for a number of years that they need an extension for this because there wasn't enough time to test this new equipment that they would have to install. There were issues with acquiring the wireless spectrum to make sure that they could communicate with the trains and the track. And so they've been really pushing for an extension for the December 31st deadline for a number of years now.
Right, and Congress is getting involved. Republican lawmakers want an extension, but Senate Democrats are pushing back. What's the latest there?
So in the Senate, there has been sort of an issue between the Republicans and the Democrats because the Republicans have put out a bill that basically would allow the rail industry to have a 3-year extension of this deadline. Democrats, including Senator Richard Blumenthal from Connecticut, have said that we don't want to give the industry sort of a blanket extension. If they need it on the case-by-case basis, that's something we can do. On the House side, however, you have Democrats like Peter DeFazio from Oregon who are getting behind House legislation that would also give a 3-year extension, and as well as 2 possibly additional years at the discretion of the Department of Transportation. And he thinks that this is a pretty strong bill. Senate Democrats still don't agree with that. There allegedly are some talks between the 2 sides, the Democrats in both chambers as well as Republicans, and we'll see if they can work something out.
Yeah, we'll have you come back, give us an update. Stephanie Beasley, transportation reporter at Bloomberg BNA. Thanks, Stephanie.
Thank you.